La isla que se repite, Dubliners, El Caribe, Duridian hospitality, La isla que se repite, yes, resounding, El Caribe, Duridian hospitality, Joycean is a yes, resounding. La isla que se repite, Dubliners, El Caribe, Duridian hospitality, Joycean is a yes, resounding. La isla que se repite, Dubliners, El Caribe, Duridian hospitality, Joycean is a yes, resounding. La isla que se repite, Dubliners, El Caribe, La isla que se repite, Joycean is a yes, resounding. Duridian hospitality, Joycean is a yes, resounding. La isla que se repite, Dubliners, El Caribe, La isla que se repite, La isla que se repite, yes, resounding. Duridian hospitality, Duridian hospitality, yes, resounding, yes, resounding. La isla que se repite, La isla que se repite, El Caribe, Duridian hospitality, Joycean, yes, resounding, yes, resounding. El Caribe, La isla que se hospitality, Joycean is a yes, resounding. Duridian hospitality, Joycean is a yes, La isla que se repite, Dubliners, El Caribe, Duridian hospitality, Joycean is a yes, resounding.
So one of the dislocating aspects of the Transborder Immigrant Tool was that the original name was, when turned into its primary letters, was TIT, TET. And as people started speaking of TET, right, and both in Spanish and English, of course, it was very much the breast. And so one of the questions I had to ask myself and the rest of the community was, you know, do we go with TET? And obviously on the right it was, you are sucking off the TET of the nation, allowing economies from the university to go into the flows of these undocumented, or as they say, illegal communities. So one of the kind of semantic shifts in the performance was to re-emphasize TBT, right? But in the discussion with the kind of vision of the Saint Mother, the breast, in a certain sense, this moment, it re-dislocates that idea to return back to the TET itself. And that is to return to the pseudo-origins of the Transborder Immigrant Tool. Here's Brett Stahlbaum, a new media artist that I've worked with, developing electronic disturbance theater and the theory and practice of electronic civil disobedience since 1998 in solidarity with the Zapatistas. There you have the iMotorola 455 that we've used to create the Transborder Immigrant Tool. Simply, it's again in agreement with our idea was to imagine the border as a fiction, as a conceptual space. And this has been part of the dialogue with Amy. How do we reconceptualize that fiction through this gesture? And so TET then was imagined within the performative matrix that I've tried to establish at Bang Lab at UCSB with my researchers, which is a lab at Cal IT 2. And that is that we always look at these gestures in a horizontal level focused on three things. That is the question of infrastructure. What is the minimal infrastructure, the least costly, and what we imagine the most efficient? Two, semantics or syntactical. That is the code simple? In this case, midlets, right? Can they be internationalized within that sort of frame of code community, distributed, understood, easy information, as easy as electronic civil disobedience, HTML, and JavaScript. The next was the level of semantics, right? The level of language production, which again would play within the kind of aesthetic inspirations of land art, movement, walking art, and of course this kind of aesthetic state-sponsored project. And so that was in 2005, but it came from this earlier theorization with Critical Art Ensemble of the notion of a performative matrix. so that the work in terms of its research at Bang Lab is always looking at the question of performance and obviously the performativities that emerge from that. Since Critical Art Ensemble's early work on electronic disturbance, assemblage of data bodies and real bodies as a recombinant theater. And often what happens is when I do speak to communities, they again attach very quickly to the tool, but don't conceive of it as theater, don't conceive of it within the histories of performance. And so often when these investigations start, they say, how do you define this? I said, well, this is Aeschylean tragedy. It is at its core about social tragedy, and that is in Aeschylus, especially the Oresteia, it is about two conflicts between the Chthonian, the ancient culture, and the new justice, right? And they encounter each other. So while Agamemnon and Clytemnestra die in Act 1 and Act 2, the real focus is a social agitprop that Aeschylus brings forth, right? So it's not the perfect kind of Sophoclean, a good man, honorable man falling down. It's not the Euripidean irrational crisis. It is an agitprop drama as far as I'm concerned. So all of this to me is a theater based on classical Greek drama, a la Aeschylus. And often when I say these things, then it really dislocates the way these investigators are viewing this. And obviously, electronic civil disobedience in the way electronic disturbance theater has practiced it is to not only create ECD is CD reinvigorated, but performed at multiple levels, right? Performed as infrastructure, syntactical, and semantic. The outcome in the 90s was that electronic civil disobedience, as we practiced, was to disturb the conditions of definition and dislocate them. That is, the early theorization of Critical Art Ensemble was an anonymous secret cell, right, that would use technological knowledge to do its actions. In our particular reconfiguration, we dislocated that to a transparent gesture, one which was almost technologically inefficient, but affective, symbolic in its strength and performativity. And so we shifted the kind of doctrine of cyber war, cyber terrorism, cyber crime, which was defined via technological efficiency. And we said, well, no, that's not what's being performed here. So many of the responses at that time, like the Department of Defense, well, if it's not illegal, it was certainly immoral. And so this allowed a different performance to take place, a dialogue that reshifted their definitions in terms of pure technology to a social drama, a social space. Part of the gesture, of course, is the tradition of new media art from Jody.org and others, 404 file, justice not found, human rights not found, in terms of the floodnet system that Carmen Karasik and Brett Stahlbaum developed in the floodnet system. It hits the reload for a refresh, how many people come, it says who did it, right? We are doing this. You can do view source, look at all the code. It is not secret, it's not a crack system. And it uploads these 404 questions using a primary model of network culture in the browser. No, there is no transparency at UCOP. Again, we view it as a theatrical prop and gesture. It was very much the outgrowth of a relationship with a notion of the Zapatistas in 1994, what we named digital Zapatismo, and that was to create a new condition of immateriality and materiality unified, data bodies and real bodies in a transparent performance. And the performance was indeed, as Rita pointed out, to create a new type of geography of struggle, that is to stop the weightlessness and social consequences of an immaterial ethics, to quote myself, quoting her, quoting me, which is really useful to have scholars quote you so you can quote yourself and have something else.